What is going on, guys? Thank you so much for tuning into yet another episode of the Sports Muse podcast. I am your host, Kevin Brumley, and I am joined by my co-host today, James. James, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm excited about these fights and excited to be here on the Sports Muse.
Absolutely. Who's not excited to be on the Sports Muse? I mean, it's kind of the biggest podcast in the world.
It is getting big, man. Jason Kendall the other day, me.
It's neck and neck.
It really is.
What's kind of your overall feeling about the card? 252.
I think there's like a lot of upside. I'm excited because DC is, for all intents and purposes, probably top 3 or 4 favorite fighters for me. So just out of personal interest, I feel like this is like the first card in a while that I've been emotionally invested in as far as like who's gonna win, right? And for me, it's also like I'm like for like the last one I could think of was like Nate versus Jorge off the top of my head, and I didn't want either guy to lose. This one,
That's a
I
good point.
have a clear bias, and those are sometimes the most fun to watch.
And that's actually a really good point. I didn't even think about that. Like, there's been some really good cards recently, but this is one of those ones where like you definitely have a rooting interest. So I do like that. And guys, before we start our breakdown, make sure you click like and subscribe, or else you'll die. I don't know. But so let's start off with the main event, man. DC versus Stipe. We're looking at, DC's 41 years old. Stipe will be 38 next week. Combined losses for these guys are 5 losses. You know what I mean? These guys are 2 of the best in the world. We saw DC knock out Stipe in the first round in the first fight with a little shovel hook. We saw, DC was looking really good in the, first 2.5, 3 rounds. And in the fourth round, man, Stipe caught fire and ended up putting him out, knocking him out. The tides turned really, really quickly. So for this third one, it's going to be a good one, man. Let's start off with, what's your thoughts?
So I had like a lot of mixed feelings going into this fight, and it's really weird because I actually, up until about this past week, I've been really thinking that this is Stipe's fight to lose, and that this should be a win, right? Because you just look at the physical disadvantages that DC has to overcome, but he's been doing it his whole career. But it still plays a factor every time I have to pick his fights, right? And with Daniel, I was a little worried. He hasn't fought since his loss. And on top of that, I think that he was getting kind of out of shape. It looked like he was putting on quite a few pounds. However, I don't know if you've watched any of the build-up to this fight. I think he's taking and that's the thing about Daniel Cormier. It's why he's 22-2, right? He is a competitor of the highest caliber. I don't think he walked into the octagon in bad shape last time. I do think he got gassed. I don't think he was training as hard. I think he thought he really could just walk Stipe down and finish him. And for all intents and purposes, he did. He beat Stipe's ass for 2.5, 3 rounds. I mean, pretty bad. I was kind of shocked Stipe was still standing. And I think Daniel was too. With that said, I think Daniel is training extremely hard. I don't think that he wants to get in a position where he is winded. And he brings up a really good point in a lot of his interviews is that throughout all the minutes they've shared in the octagon, Stipe's had maybe a minute where he looked, like the better man. And it was an adjustment, and kudos to Stipe. He made the adjustment and he won. But adjustment's something that doesn't usually happen a second time. And I think that DC is going to come into this fight and he's going to be in better shape than last fight and maybe even better than the first fight. I think we're going to see like a great Daniel Cormier, as great as he can be at 38 years old. I do have some concerns, but we can talk about those in a bit. But I'm feeling very positive on DC, very positive. And I also wonder external circumstances with Stipe being a first responder, where he's at mentally. Not to say, oh, he's just going to be totally washed or anything like that, but all that stuff plays a role, especially getting ready for a big fight and how focused you can be. I mean, he's doing a job that is extremely noble, and I don't think anyone can knock him for that. I don't hate Stipe. I'm not the biggest Stipe fan in general, but I don't know. I just have a feeling. I feel like Daniel Cormier has always looked for his crowning achievement, and you would have thought it would have been when he won his second title, or first title in a second weight division, being a double champ. But I think this is the career-defining moment for Daniel Cormier.
No, and I like that a lot. This is a weird fight on paper because, like you said, pretty much DC has everything going against him, right? He's in his 40s. He's never been a super in shape guy. Like he's always had cardio, but like his weight has always looked pretty terrible for the past handful of years. When he first came into the UFC, he was tighter. But yeah, cardio's never really been his biggest issue. But like you said, he was really sharp the first two fights. Like you look at this last fight, okay, the fight number 2. DC when he was at range was sharper, which is weird because you would feel like it would definitely advantage Stipe with, he has an 8-inch reach advantage.
Yeah.
You feel like he would just pitter patter the jab, 1-2s, work his way in. That's not what it was. And really weird strategy that's like, I don't know if I've ever seen it for that long of a duration but DC was just literally hand fighting and just like punching out of hand fighting for like large chunks of the second fight. And it was working. I don't know if like that kind of close encounter, constantly, like, even though it's not grappling, but just you're constantly kind of tense, you're kind of constantly, jockeying for position. If that kind of warmed down a little bit and then those body shots just kind of tipped it over the top, I'm not sure about that. I am curious, does DC wrestle more? Does he try to clinch up more? And we know that if you don't get it, Stipe can wrestle. If you don't get that takedown, it's even more tiring. So I'm not exactly sure what we're going to see from DC. And I think that's one of the things I'm most curious about. Does he come out there? Does he close quarters, try to hand fight, strike? Does he try to strike at distance? Does he try to clinch him up? Does he try to take him down? I'm not sure. So, this, like I said, it's a really fun fight. And my biggest concern is I do think DC's training his absolute hardest. But the question is, what is his best at 41? I don't know if that's going to be enough at the end of the day. Good thing is for DC, Stipe is not a young man in his own right. But I'm not exactly sure, man. I don't really have a great feel. I feel like this fight could go either way. Me personally, I think I'm leaning toward DC because I think it's evident, it's clear that he's the superior fighter as far as skills.
Yeah.
And that's nothing against Stipe. You know what I mean? He's a great fighter. I just feel like DC's just a little bit better at everything than Stipe is. But you just worry about those physical tools that Stipe brings in there.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really good point. I don't like, to me, like, I think DC is the superior fighter on any day. I mean, again, even whenever he lost, he was still the superior fighter for 90% of that. Now, it only matters, if you can finish it. I get that. But you bring up a valid concern with DC. Like, what is he going to do? Because I think DC, the way he wins this fight, he can outbox Stipe. He did largely in this second fight, right? Can you hear my cat meowing?
No.
Great. I'm glad. Just wailing. But DC, and I think a lot of guys from his camp have fallen into not following the game plan, because
Sure.
it's pretty much public knowledge that DC just didn't follow the game plan in his fight for Stipe. His corner was telling him to shoot for takedowns, and he was winning on the feet, and he just got carried away. And it's concerning because does Daniel Cormier want to try to get that back, or is he going to listen to his corner? If he listens to the corner and he mixes up his wrestling with his striking, I think it's an easy night at the office. I really do. And the first fight where he dusted Stipe was because he was mixing up his wrestling and striking, and the overhook, and then exiting out of giving up the overhook or underhook, and sleeping him. Like, that's exactly what he has to do again. Also, if DC wants to take down Stipe, he will. I don't think Stipe is not a terrible wrestler. DC is one of the best, one of the very, very best.
So the one thing I would say is I do think DC can get Stipe to the mat, right? I think my concern would be, is it worth the energy? Because he's not going to be easy to put down on the mat. Can you do it is one thing. Do you want to expend that energy is another? That's where I'm not sure. And that's where I think it might be, if the takedown presents itself, great, but I think he might want to clinch him up, work him over a little bit, and kind of, shorten the fight. It's about shortening the fight because Stipe does have a better gas tank. And like I said, he's not Francis Ngannou, where he has one round of, energy and then the rest of it's just him trying to coast. He's never been that type of fighter. But if you can shorten it from a 25-minute fight to 19 minutes, you know what I mean? I think that's going to play even more into DC's hands, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think DC's had largely very good cardio.
Yeah.
The big issue is, all right, so there's two things. So I think his cardio is what lost him the second John Jones fight. I think he started making a lot more mistakes when he was getting tired and having success. And obviously it ran into the Stipe. Though I think the body shots were like a bigger factor than DC being super duper gassed or anything like that. But a shorter fight is going to favor DC in every way, shape, and form. Now we're talking about like getting him down and how much energy that expends. I believe that there is a difference between the cardio of striking and wrestling. And I think DC is probably a lot more comfortable with being tired in wrestling than he is boxing tired.
That's fair.
And I actually think there's a lot of people, I think a lot of true martial arts, that's probably just how it feels because you can get into positions where you can stall. Someone might pass your guard if you're tired, but whenever you're kickboxing with someone and you're tired, you're getting kicked in the fucking head, right? So it's not great. And I just say that from personal experience because I can roll in jiu-jitsu for like an hour and I'll be very tired, but like you put me in a boxing class and like 20 minutes in and I'm like, I don't know how to use my hands anymore. Like I'm so tired. So I think that wrestling is just part of his nature. And I don't think it'll use as much energy as him trying to solve the puzzle of an 8-inch reach advantage with Stipe on the feet.
And I think that's where it gets challenging as far as the stand-up is he has to exert so much energy to get in and then back out. Not that he's like, he's Wonder Boy Thompson. He's an in-and-out fighter. But, he doesn't want to get in there and just lollygag around, right? He's going to eat it.
Yeah.
I honestly think the biggest thing that helped Stipe out this last fight was his chin was so much better than what it looked like.
Right?
Yeah. He took a lot of heavy shots and he kept coming. Even though he was losing, those exchanges, he never stopped. If DC tried to pull away and kind of catch his breath a little bit, Stipe never quit forward pressure, which is tiring. We know that it's a lot more difficult to laterally move and to move backwards than it is to be the pressure guy. The one thing that, you talked about the body strikes, you think they had a lot more effect than the cardio is, when I talk about DC did not train for this second fight against Stipe.
No,
it was weird to me that in like the first, second, even third round, he was talking to his coaches. He's like, "Am I up 2-0? Am I down 2 rounds?" Like to me, like in his head, he was like, "I don't know if I can win the late rounds. If I'm up, I know I can kind of be a little bit safer." So I just wonder, like, if DC's taking this a lot more serious and his cardio is a lot better. I don't know if physically he can hit that next level anymore. He can hit that 6th gear anymore. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a decent point. I don't think I've seen anything from DC's age that would indicate that he's on a downward slope, like super hard. Helps being in the heavyweight division because we don't see those speed differences, though he was much faster than Stipe, I thought. Man, it's just DC took a lot of damage in that second fight too. Like he had zero respect for Stipe's power, which does make me nervous. Again, it's going to come down to the fact if DC is going to fight the smartest fight possible. And I think he has to, even though I think he's just a better fighter than Stipe Miocic. Like if Stipe wins this fight, I still would think that Daniel's a better fighter. I know people will give me shit for that. But DC has to fight with a high IQ to overcome all of the physical disadvantages that are posed in this fight, like most of his career. I thought that Gus would have been like one of the perfect people to beat him, right? And DC fought brilliant. He was brilliant in that fight, and he was always brilliant against Anthony Johnson. And he has to do that again. I would honestly rather see him treat Stipe with a lot more respect, like an Anthony Johnson, for how heavy-handed Anthony was, than to walk him down and do the hand fighting. Like, I really want to see him mix it up. And I think he's going to, I'll be honest. I think he wants to be a definitive win.
Yeah, I think this is one where he just wants to end his career on the W, even if it's not the dream walk-off win. I think ending with the W, walking away with that title is the most important thing to him. So
Yeah.
that's why ultimately I am picking DC. I'm going to take DC. I think we finally get something nice in 2020. I think we get a good story with DC, just like an impossible guy to hate. You know, I know some people don't like DC. I don't get it. He literally seems like the nicest guy in the world. But I think we finally get a good story in 2020. I say DC wins it in the 4th round. Same round he lost last time.
Yeah, I'm actually going to take DC round 1.
Really?
Yeah, I am. I
Knocking
think
him
he's going to
out?
put it. Yeah, I think he'll finish. I would actually love if DC just took him down and strangled him. I don't know why, but like, there's something about when someone's that high of a level, like, you know what I mean? Like, we're not going to see another Daniel Cormier for a bit, and it would just be really cool to see him go out like with his strength. Now, I'm not saying submission game's his strength, but his
Wrestling.
bottom, his wrestling, not bottom, but top game, like in wrestling is just, it's awesome, man. And I'm picking DC no matter what, because this is the last time I'll ever get to say I picked Daniel Cormier to win a fight. So when Right Above It kicks on, I will be standing up in my living room getting chills, no doubt.
I'll be there with you because I'm coming down to visit.
That's right.
Which brings us to our co-main event. We got Sugar Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Vera. If you're not familiar with Sugar Sean O'Malley by now, you need to be, because this dude's special. I'm always a little bit apprehensive when the UFC pushes a guy. The last fight, even though it wasn't like it was against the stiffest competition, but I didn't think he had one shot walk-off power, and damn, I was wrong. You're talking about a 25-year-old man. We're talking about he's unbeaten. I'm honestly surprised they didn't push him early, because that's what the UFC is known for. They're known for taking a guy that they want to succeed, and they kind of throw him to the wolves a little bit too early. I actually think Sean's probably ready, and they're giving him another guy. Vera's not a bump. You know what I mean? This is going to be another solid, contest for him. But I can't imagine, unless Sean O'Malley beats Sean O'Malley, I can't see Sugar Sean losing this one. How about you?
Well, I mean, how do you feel about Marlon Vera? Do you feel like he's a legit contender?
So I don't think he's a contender in the sense where we'll ever see him fight for a title. He seems like a guy where he'll beat the guys he's supposed to beat, and he's probably going to lose to the guys he's supposed to lose. Kind of like a gatekeeper in a sense. He's a guy where, like, Sean fought Eddie Wineland last time, and now Eddie Wineland's getting up there in age a little bit, but he's very much the same. Where he's just a really good competition for a young guy. If a young guy is kind of biting off a little bit more you chew, Vera's going to take him out, but I think Sugar Sean O'Malley is special, man. I really do.
Yeah, I'm pretty much almost there to buy in on Sugar Sean's hype. Vera's just an interesting guy, but he lost a decision against was it Yodong Song? If I've mispronounced that, I'm sorry. But before that, on a bit of a run, man. He had
5 of his
5
last
wins,
6. Yep.
3, and all of them were finishes. That's what's interesting to me. And I wonder if Marlon can come out and just set a pace on Sugar Sean, because Sugar Sean's definitely seems almost like a rhythm guy. He seems to like to kind of find his spots and pick them. The way that you usually disrupt somebody like that is actually, it's usually pressure wrestling, like a Frankie Edgar kind of style. I don't think Marlon's going to do that, but I do think Marlon's dangerous everywhere. And I am going to pick Marlon Vera.
Really?
Yes.
How do you
I'm
think he wins?
I think he'll win a decision.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm going, because I kind of sort of anticipate something. What you're saying is I think he's going to try to throw him off rhythm, pressure him up, clinch him up, because if there's kind of a downfall to O'Malley, is he's not physically a super strong guy. He's pretty lanky. You would think he would try to clinch him up, test him, maybe try to get him to the ground, see what he can do. But O'Malley kind of, in a way, has like this Izzy Adesanya kind of aura around him, where it's just like, even though we haven't seen that side of him yet, I just don't think he's going to be an easy guy to get down. And I think it's going to be one of those things where after like a 3-minute clinch, it's going to be like, ugh, I'm in trouble now. And
Yeah.
I'm taking second round KO for Sugar Sean.
Yeah, I mean, trust me, I won't be surprised if O'Malley wins, and if O'Malley does, if he wins in spectacular fashion, like a kind of like a walk-off KO like last time, I think then that's going to make some big waves, which is weird because like Marlon Vera is not like a household name, but whenever you have that many highlights for a guy, and he's that charismatic, and he's that likable, and he's that unique looking, I think you have something pretty damn special there. I'm a big Sean O'Malley fan. I'm not hating on the guy either, but I am so apprehensive to get on hype trains now. I just am. Um, I'm almost always a pessimist when it comes to these things. So I think it might be a little bit of a reality check for him. But I hope I'd be pleasantly, shocked. I'll be happy if I'm wrong. So.
Well, I honestly kind of thought that with Eddie Wineland. I did not think I thought he was going to win the fight. But I thought it was going to be a little bit more of a test where we kind of see, what O'Malley's sort of made out of. We didn't get to see that, man, because he dominated the fight. He just walk off thing of beauty, one shot sleeper, man.
Eddie Wineland's also taken a lot of damage over his career,
Yes.
and
Yes.
Marlon has never been finished. So that to me, it's like, dude, if Sean touches him and he goes out with one shot, then I'm gonna be a big believer in the death touch of O'Malley. Like, I'll be a big believer. But is it just a perfect storm? We'll see. We'll see, right? Timing's everything in this sport. It's everything.
Yeah, this is smart placement, a smart matchup for O'Malley. You're putting him on a DC card at the co-main with a guy that he on paper should beat. I think this is just the blossoming of his star, to be completely honest with you. The fight before that is a good one, man. I'm pretty excited for this one. Usually heavyweight, I'm kind of like, oh, but I don't know. So we got JDS versus Rosenstruck. So JDS is 36. He is fighting in his 22nd UFC fight, man. He's been around for a
in the heavyweight division.
So he is 1-2. Over his last 3, he beat Derek Lewis and he lost to Francis Ngannou and Curtis Blades. Rosenstruck is 32 years old. He's 10-1 with his only loss coming to Francis Ngannou. Listen, man, I think I'm kind of in the minority here. I don't like Rosenstruck. I personally kind of think he's more height than skill. He lost for 24 minutes and 50 seconds against Alistair Overeem. Not that JDS is the exact fighter of an Overeem, but the blueprint is there. Forget about the Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou is barely human. I'm not even 100% sure he is human. So when he blitzed him, put him out in 20 seconds, wipe it clean. I don't care about that. I'm not taking that consideration. But the blueprint's there, right? He's a great power striker. And the thing that does scare me about Rosenstruck is the fact that he could one punch blow up Alistair Overeem's face like that after fighting for 25 minutes shows that he has power that's going to last a while. JDS can be knocked out, no doubt about it. As he's gotten older, he's been a lot more easy to hurt. But I think, have you seen pictures of JDS recently?
Dude, he's gonna pop. He's gonna pop.
So, I'm kind of curious. Does he try to follow that blueprint? He's a boxer. I'm not exactly sure, but JDS is a slight underdog, and I'm going with the dog in this one, man. I don't know.
Oh man, this is like a pride
probably gonna
fight.
be pissed when it blows up in my face.
This just feels like a pride fight, doesn't it?
Yep.
Like, I don't know why. It just kind of reminds me like whenever Crow Cop fought Randleman. Randleman was a lot more skilled than Rosenstruck, so that's a terrible example. But it kind of reminds me of that, just for the sole fact that you got this guy with this insane power, and then you have one of the best technical strikers in the heavyweight division, just like Crow Cop was. This is so fun. I love JDS. He's like kind of like, I don't know. I just look at him as like the grandpa almost of like the heavyweight division now, which is super insulting probably, but a jacked grandpa that could beat my ass. I mean that endearingly, but Rosenstruck, I'm not big on him either. But you can't deny that the dude just has dynamite in his fist. Sure. Do I think JDS is better? Yes, I think JDS is better 99% of the time. But if you're telling me Rosenstruck only has to hit one, JDS is going to take a punch in this fight.
Yep.
JDS has been finishing his last 2 fights. I think I'm going to take Rosenstruck. I don't want to. But you know what's weird, though? It's kind of like when he fought Tai Tuivasa. Like, I was like, I think he's way better than Tai, but Tai's going to win. But Tai doesn't have that fuck you power that Rosenstruck has.
Sure.
Like, Rosenstruck's pretty much only outdone by Francis in just ridiculous one-shot power in the heavyweight division. So as much as I want to see JDS win, I'm going to take Rosenstruck. I am. But you know another thing, man, Rosenstruck didn't get knocked out that long ago.
Yeah.
And JDS can knock you the fuck out too. So it's like, man, is Rosenstruck just taking this fight to take it? Like, I don't mean like, oh, he's not ready. I mean, like, literally his brain is probably not healed from that Ford Escort that hit him in the fucking head.
And you look at it, and Rosenstruck's 32. He's not, a young guy by any means, but he only has 11 fights.
Hey, man, we're almost 32. You need to relax on all this young man shit.
And it just makes me wonder that, is he going to know how to deal with some of the situations that JDS may put him in?
No.
You know what I mean? But he has the great equalizer. You know what I mean? He has the great equalizer, which is power at that heavyweight division. And you know what? Like you said, JDS can fight 99% of a perfect fight, and it takes one slip when you have that kind of power that Rosenstruck has, and it is night.
Yeah. I will say, I think I'm underselling the fact that JDS can also finish this fight just a bit. This is a tough one. I don't know. I'm going to take Rosenstruck just to continue my trend of bad picks, I guess.
No, I imagine you'll be right. I think he's the favorite for a reason. But I think JDS is going to maybe try to clinch up with him a little bit. He's either going to try to be completely out or completely in. I don't think he wants to play at all in that middle range. I don't think you're going to see the classic JDS working his jab as much.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be very much in or out. So I'm taking JDS by decision.
I think the reason I'm taking Rosenstruck first round knockout, and the reason why is when I look at Rosenstruck's record, he beat Andre Arlovski with the knockout, and I think Andre is like a more careful version of JDS. Like, I think JDS is actually more dangerous overall. Like, we kind of know when Arlovski goes out, it's either he's going to knock out or win by decision, right?
Sure.
Arlovski's so in and out and has improved his defense tremendously. Is why he's had such an elongated career here at the end of his tenure. But I think JDS takes a lot more risks. I mean, this is a guy that went in there and tried to swing and bang with Francis.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so that's my real reason for picking Rosenstruck. I'm not like super high on the guy by any means, but I think JDS is hittable.
Nah, and I get it. And we'll see how it plays out. It's a heavyweight fight, so literally anything's possible.
Yeah.
Which brings us to our next fight. It's going to be probably the last one we cover, because we just literally right before we went on found out that the opener for the main card was off because of COVID. So the last fight that we have notes on for this main card, we'll talk about a few other things, is John Dodson versus Merab Dvalishvili. Dvalishvili.
Yeah, Merab. Like you said, Merab.
Merab versus John Dodson.
I'm not even sure if we're saying that right.
Merab.
Merab.
So John Dodson, a vet. I know you're not a huge John Dodson fan. He's 5-5 over his last 10, which you're like, oh man, he's slipping a little bit in his mid-30s. He's split them. Look at the guys he's lost to. Over his last 5 losses, he's lost to Peter Yan, Rivera, Marlon Moraes, John Lineker, and Mighty Mouse.
Come on.
If you're going to lose to 5 guys, I mean, Rivera's by far the worst fighter on that list, and Rivera's no slouch. I don't know. I don't think John Dodson's ever going to fight for another title by any means.
No.
I don't think he's even really going to scratch the surface. But I think Merab he's not the hardest guy to figure out. And to me, it's going to boil down, I think Dodson on paper, when you watch the fight, he's the more skilled fighter. His output is a little bit lower at this point, but you worry about either what's going to win out, the skills or the physical advantage that Merab has. Because he's going to look to come in straight punches. He's going to look to clinch you up. He's going to look to put you down and then mat return you as soon as you get right back up. He's not a great finisher. I really do see this fight. If I'm going to bet on anything for this fight, it's going to decision.
Yeah.
Because neither guy's Dotson has some pop, but
He did finish his last fight.
Yeah, he did. He did in the third round. But I kind of see this one going to decision. I don't really have a great feel. I've honestly probably flip-flopped last night when I was writing my notes. I probably flip-flopped 4 times. I'm like, I'm going to bet on this guy because I'm a degenerate gambler. Instead of just going, hey, Kevin, you don't have an idea about this fight. Why don't you just not bet on it? And I go, well, let's flip a coin and let's pick one and let's ride it. Dotson is a slight dog. I think Dotson's, better than savvy. If I'm going to be wrong about this stuff, man, I just picked JDS because I thought he was the vet and he's going to figure out some stuff. It's going to blow up my face and I'm going to lose a ton of money this Saturday. So prepare for that. But that's kind of how I see this. I think it's not the hardest fight to figure out to me. But I think that's how it boils down. Is it skill or is it, the will that's going to win out?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to take Dodson. I'm not excited about this fight at all. I think it does go to decision. But Dotson has been around, man, and he's always been game, and he's always been tough. And I just see him edging it out. I think he'll at some point he'll transition to more of a gatekeeper. I think he's a little better than a gatekeeper at this point, like a high level gatekeeper, if you will.
I agree with that.
But yeah, I think Dotson wins, and I think he can edge it out. And I think you're right. I think he's a more experienced fighter, and he can control the fight. And I don't think he's at much risk of being finished early. I mean, it could always happen. It's a fist fight, but I just don't see Dotson losing at a decision.
I think this honestly, not only I'm thinking this fight's going to go to decision, it just strikes me as a split decision kind of fight. And I know that's weird. It's like, oh, how do you know it's going to be split or unanimous? It just seems like one of those fights where it's going to come to the scorecards. I'm going to be like, I think this person won, but I am not going to be surprised in the slightest if the other guy won. And it's just one of those ones where it just feels like it's going to be close. I don't really see it being one way, any possible way.
Yeah, and I think really at the end of the day, the real loser will be us having to watch this fight.
I don't think it's going to be that bad.
I'm just being a piece of shit.
So, we talked about the one fight getting scrapped with the old Hulk. The rest of the card, some of the people in the prelims, there's some fun ones, man. Is there any other fighter you're looking forward to watching, or any other fights you're kind of pumped about on the prelims before we head out?
I'm pretty fired up about Verna Jandiroba. She's from Brazil. She's 15-1, and her only loss is to Carla Esparza by decision. She chases submissions like a mad woman, and she's fighting Felice Herring, which we all know is a dog and has always been game to scrap. And I think that this is going to be extremely fun, and I think we'll see some good jiu-jitsu there, because I know Herring has a couple submission victories, and I think Verna is just like so reckless when she goes for her submission, not in a bad way, but like she's not afraid to risk it all for it. And having a decision loss to Carla Esparza is not particularly the worst thing in the world, right? And I'm pretty sure in that fight, if I remember, she just kind of got pressure boxed and controlled, and then tried to pull some stuff off and didn't work. So kind of excited that anyone that's 15-1 and has been in the UFC for whatever it is, 2 to 3 fights. I mean, that's something to be noted. So that's an interesting one. I believe they're strawweight. Yeah, the strawweight in the 115 division. And the one that me and you had kind of talked about is the Burns fight.
Yes, that should be a fun one, man. Herbert Burns, always a fun one, going against Daniel Pineda. I was just kind of looking at like the UFC stats. Dude, it says that Burns eats 6 significant strikes per minute. Like, Jesus Christ. Like,
yeah, he's not the most defensive fighter, but he's dangerous.
Yes.
Like, he's a finisher, right? So like this is one of the, and to be honest with you, I don't know if you've looked at Daniel Pineda. He has a lot of fights. He's fought in Bellator with PFL. He used to fight in the UFC way back in the Dizzy in 2014. His last 2 fights were overturned by the Nevada State Athletic Commission. Don't know the story there. Probably steroids for the PFL. I'm going to assume that's what that is. I don't know who did the steroids. but I would assume it wasn't him because the UFC signed him. So definitely on a tear, and PFL has had some really good competition, but I think this is definitely like a builder fight for Burns, and Burns is going to go for that submission victory. Hopefully, he also has decent hands, but terrible defense. So there's always something so he could get sparked. So I don't know. Big fan of the Burns brothers. I always like brothers in the UFC. So pretty excited, except for the Pettises, but
Sure.
Sergio's cool.
We also have Jim Miller on this card, and dude, like Jim Miller, like I just had Chris Lytle on the show, and I feel like Jim Miller is like the new Chris Lytle, where it's just like it's going to be a fun fight. Like Jim Miller is incapable of having a not fun fight. So that's going to be a fun one right before actually he'll probably get bumped to the main card would be my guess, since the one fight's off. But no, Jim Miller's going to be a fun one. This is a fun card, and I was telling you off the air that it doesn't have the name power, but I think there's going to be a lot of fun scraps, and it's going to be one of those ones where you have the headliner, but it's also going to be a fight fan card, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of good quality fights here and a lot of excitement. Like you said, Jim Miller, Herbert Burns, Verna being on the undercard as well. But I think there is a little bit of star power here. I think people know Stipe, and I think he's popular. DC is extremely popular. Like, DC sells well without John Jones. John Jones actually sells worse without DC. DC is just one of those dudes. I mean, either love him or hate him, it seems. And I love him. And I'm so excited. This whole card could be dog shit. And as long as DC comes out on top, I'm going to be a very, very happy man.
I'm with you, man. And guys, make sure you're checking my Twitter because I'm going to drop my best bets on Saturday. And if you want to lose a lot of money with me, then let's do it.
Yeah.
Until next time, guys, we'll see you later.